Good morning, London. Welcome to the AWS Summit 2018 at the Excel Center. My name is Richard West-Binan. I am a Senior Technical Account Manager with AWS. That's part of enterprise support, for those of you who don't know. Today, we're going to be talking about a real mouthful of a conversation, cost optimization as a byproduct of awesome practice and agility at Trainline. It is going to be an awesome presentation, and I'm hoping that you learn a lot and it really helps with your cost optimization. Don't forget today, we do have a hashtag, AWS Summit. Put it out there for those of you Twitterados, and let's start. So, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to cover off the typical AWS cost optimization methodology. This is something that we talk to our customers about day in and day out from an enterprise support perspective. We're then going to hand over to Trainline. They're going to give us a fantastic insight and a great story around theirs on cost optimization. And then we're going to close out with a couple of tips and tricks and have you on your way. So, the AWS cost optimization methodology. Before we start, let's take a step back, right? Quick evolution of cost optimization and where we see it coming from. So typically, in a big enterprise environment, you have your on-premises load, you look to moving to the cloud, and when you start going to the cloud, most organizations typically start with a lift and shift policy, and suddenly what they might find is their costs start to escalate a little bit, and that's kind of a little bit of an unforeseen thing because cloud is usually aimed at being cheaper, right? So immediately we get into cost optimization discussions. There's a number of things we talk about: instance right-sizing, storage optimization, and we go through a various number of pillars, and at the end of that, there's a lot more to be gained. Once you get to that level, you can start getting into the real nitty-gritty. But as we jump in, let's go to the 5 pillars of cost optimization. I just want to let you know there will be a number of articles, links, and things that I may reference during the presentation to kind of prevent you from suddenly trying to get your phone out and take a picture to remember. I've actually included a slide right at the end that's got all the URLs, so don't worry about if you miss something. There's actually not going to be any URLs in the presentation. They're right at the end. I will put the deck up at the end for you to come and take a picture of, those of you who want to. So 5 pillars of cost optimization. This is something that is core to enterprise support. This is something that's core to us as TAMs, technical account managers. Those of you that are customers that have enterprise support, this is what our focus is on with you as our customers. Amazon is quite a unique company, quite a unique organization. We're one of the few companies out there that likes to save our customers money, and that's what my focus as a TAM is. Actually kind of my remit, not really one of my KPIs, but what I'm told to do is go save your customers money. So let's jump into the 5 pillars of cost optimization. What do we talk about with our customers? And this is where we start. First, right-sizing your instances. Let's look at what you're running. Let's look how you can best run it. Next, increase elasticity. You're moving to the cloud. You want to be scalable. This is what it's all about. Make sure you've got the right environment for your workloads. Pick the right pricing model. This is where cost optimization really comes into effect. And let's help you make sure that you're making the right decisions around how to get the long-term benefits out of cloud. Cloud is not a small journey for most of you, if any of you. In fact, cloud is more likely a mindset and it's a long-term strategy. So let's make sure that if you're committing to it, you're going to get the best response from it. Match usage to storage class. You know, we all forget about storage a lot. A lot of my customers have some really big S3 buckets. And when they look at the cost optimization across it, you know, a couple of $1,000s a month is a couple of $1,000s a month. So there's some great places to start there as well. And to wrap it all up, measuring and monitoring. This is obviously core and fundamental to making sure that if you maintain and you continue the process, it's going to pay dividends for you. So first step, turn on the cost and usage report. CUR file. Some of you might be going, wait, whoa, what's a CUR file? What's a CUR file? I know about DBRs. I've heard about DBRs. Well, oops, excuse me. The DBR, the detailed billing report, this is what some of you are currently used to getting. The DBR is not receiving any new features. Moving forward, we're moving to the CUR. The cost and usage report is the most recent detailed billing offering. It's got a lot more intuitive column headers. There's been a lot of asks about that. It's got a lot of advanced features as well. It now dives into RI size flexibility. A good customer of mine does a lot of RI changes, and they want to track that. The CUR allows you to track that really well now. And first and foremost, it's the source. It's the source of Cost Explorer. which brings me to Cost Explorer. This is a real-world customer of mine's Cost Explorer. It's not Trainline's. I need to state that right here, right now. It's not Trainline's Cost Explorer. I don't know what their Cost Explorer looks like, but this is an actual customer of mine. And as you can see, this is a great place to start. If you're going to start looking at cost optimization, you should be using Cost Explorer. For those of you that don't have access to Cost Explorer, reach out to your cloud teams right now and go, I need access to this. Why? Because immediately it's telling you what your monthly spend is, and it's telling you, in this case, it's EC2 hours used. However, so you know what, that's great, but that's my overall spend. What does that mean? Great things is Cost Explorer's got a lot of really cool functionality built in. As you can see there, I've grouped by service. Straight away, we can see, ooh, in January, this customer had a little bit of a blip in their EC2 other department. What went on there? Well, when we dived into it, they had a team that kind of went rogue for the month of Jan. I think they came back from December and realized they wanted to jump straight into it, and costs got a little bit out of control. Immediately, they knew where their costs were going. They managed to get it under control. So this is a fantastic graph. I love this. This is one of my favorite graphs. This is, once again, that same customer's usage of EC2 over 6 months on a daily period. Great example here of already the customer's doing a lot of cost optimization. You can see every weekend they're turning a number of workloads off. That's a fantastic place to start, and we'll dump into that. So, pillar one, right sizing. When we talk about right sizing, it's basically talking about choosing the most cost-effective instance for your workload, right? So what do we mean by that? You've done a lift and shift. In your lift and shift environment, you needed 16 gigs of memory and 8 cores. Great, you move to the cloud. Well, you know what, you're probably monitoring it on-prem, but when you move to the cloud, you realize that's quite a big instance, and it might be costing you a fair amount of money as on-demand, always on. Well, guess what? When you look at it, we've got an example that we're going to jump into to help you analyze that. So here's an example of an M44XL. This is a real-world example. Currently in EUS 1, the on-demand price is, I'm just going to call it 88 cents per hour, right? Using CloudWatch, and CloudWatch is definitely your friend here. Make sure you're using CloudWatch for everything. Make sure you've got CloudWatch enabled for all your instances. Using CloudWatch, you can monitor CPU, you can monitor RAM, you can monitor network. Hold on, you can't monitor RAM. Well, you can monitor RAM. So we give you CloudWatch agents. The CloudWatch agent has to be installed on your instance, though. We do not have access to customer instances. We don't look inside your instance. So we know that potentially you've got a 4 gig instance, but we don't know what the memory inside that instance is doing at that point in time. Go install a CloudWatch agent, send the logs to CloudWatch, track your RAM usage. When we look at it, we see, well, actually, that line up there, that's averaging about 50, 60% utilization. The dev team on this was like, well, they're only really doing that at the end of the month, the last couple of days of the month. You know what, we're going to get a little bit aggressive here. We're going to drop this from an M4 to an M4 large. That's 11 cents an hour in EUS 1 currently. So they've right-sized down. Next step, review the performance. Look at what you're doing with it. Track it, monitor it. In this case, that's an 80% saving, straight off the bat, just by looking at your instances. If you've got a large fleet of instances, you know what, even if you're running 10, go over, look at them, see if you can break them up, see if you can downsize them. We give you a couple of tools to do this. AWS, I will have the links at the end as mentioned. We've got a cost optimization, EC2 right-sizing tool. It's a little bit, the word skips me. So it requires the use of Redshift because it does take into account your CUR file, and it helps you analyze that. So it's not for the faint of hearted, but it gives you really good and in-depth analysis. Trusted Advisor, if you've got business or enterprise support currently, you'll have access to the enhanced features of Trusted Advisor. There's a lot of checks in Trusted Advisor, and these can help show you the number one, one of the pillars there is cost optimization, and this will show you where you've got additional spend. Netflix, everyone loves Netflix. They've got a Janitor monkey, part of their Simian army. It's an open source tool. It's an older tool, but it's still very, very relevant. It can enable you to, it shows you what your unused resources are or your less used resources, and it allows you to shut them down. Go check that. The link will be at the end. Pillar 2, elasticity. This is typically what we see with big organizations, right? You've got an IT budget, you're amortizing equipment, your IT spend is amortized over either 3 to 5 years. So what do? You're spending CapEx to buy equipment. You're buying a number of servers for a development team or for your IT operations, but you know what? You're paying for them over 5 years. You're paying for them up front, but you're billing them over 5 years, and you're only going to reach, if you're lucky, your capacity in 5 years, because you have to plan for that 5 years. Become elastic. When you're in the cloud, you can start off small, you can scale up. So a classic example was one of my previous customers used to have a really big SAP job that ran at the end of the month. End of the month, their CPUs always went to 80, 90%. So their requirement for buying servers was, I need all of this for the end of the month capacity. You know what? With the cloud nowadays, be elastic. Scale up when you need, scale down when you don't. Massive cost savings there. When we talk elasticity, with scale up, scale down, we also talk about scheduled start, stop. So this graph I love as well. This is a development team. You know what, your development teams, how often do they work? Well, they work Monday to Friday. Sometimes they work weekends, sometimes they don't. Mainly Monday to Friday, probably 10 hours a day if they're lucky, right? 10 hours a day, why are you running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with your instances? Shut them off. You can shut them down, you can auto shut them down, or you can use Scheduler. EC2 Scheduler will allow you to do that for you. You can spin them up again at the end of the next morning, or if you get really clever, you can start using a Lambda function to do that for you. Fun fact, RDS now with RDS stop start, that can be shut off as well. So your development RDS databases, shut them down, don't need them running. We give you a number of tools to do that. Obviously, increase your use of autoscaling. Autoscaling is core to being able to do this. Use the EC2 Scheduler. Lambda, there's a Lambda stop start guide. And Densify is one of our partners. You'll find them on the floor. They can definitely help you and walk you through the environment of elasticity. Pillar 3, the right pricing model. This is where we get interesting. You're probably wondering, wait, cost optimization, reserved instances, when are we going to get there? Right now. What are reserved instances? Some of you have heard of them, some of you haven't heard of them. A reserved instance provides you with a discounted hourly rate and an optional capacity reservation. So what does that mean? Basically what it means is we require a commitment from you. You get an upfront discount for a commitment. RIs are applied per hour per instance reserved. Now the thing is as your instances are stopping and starting, they can make use of the RIs. It's, for lack of a better word, it's a financial construct on top of your AWS infrastructure. You can apply it at the pair account, and we can blend the costs across all your linked accounts. Or if you've got a development team that's running a specific project, and you know they're going to have infrastructure on for a year, and they're going to require it all the time, you can actually apply those RIs at that linked account, and they will only get the benefit of it. So we have different RI types as well. We have standard, and we have convertible. And RIs are available with a 1-year or a 3-year purchase. We have a number of factors that come into effect when you look at reserved instances. Excuse me. With the main difference, though, convertible RIs, you can convert across instance type, instance family, platform as well. Standard RIs are the only RIs that you can resell on the reserved instances marketplace. So those are the two main factors. When we're looking at, the big question I get then is, when we look at RIs is, well, with all these different options, which reserved instance gives me the greater discount? So, payment options, we have different payment options. You can do a no upfront payment option. Hey, that's great. I don't actually have to put money in the game first. I can continue using the RIs and pay monthly. Fantastic. There's a no upfront option. There's a partial upfront option. If you're willing to commit to a 1-year or a 3-year term upfront, you're going to get a massive discount. And I can tell you, I've seen the numbers. I've worked with customers around the numbers. The discounts when you go to 3 years are fantastic. Duration, obviously, 1 and 3 years. Operating systems, so we typically cover all operating systems, or, sorry, disclaimer, typically others operating systems. If you go Linux or Unix, you're going to get the greater discount. Instance types, older generations are covered, newer generations give a greater discount. In fact, as you'll know, if you move from M4 to M5 generations, already you're going to see a cost saving in that. With RIs, that carries through as well. And class. So convertible, obviously because there's a lot of flexibility built into a convertible, and you can chop and change, you get less of a discount if you know that you're going to be running a specific family and a specific type, and you're going to need that for a long-term commitment. Standard are fantastic. So definitely what one of my customers does is they run a lot of workloads, T2s, that whole range of T2s. They've chosen the T2 family. They've chosen a specific instance type. They've bought 3-year upfront, all upfront standard RIs. They've made a huge cost savings. So let's talk about convertible reserved instances quickly. So with convertible reserved instance, you can modify your existing reservations across instance families, instance sizes, operating systems, and tenancy. You cannot across region. So when you buy a convertible, RI. You are committing to a 1 or 3 year term. It's not refreshed on conversion if you convert. Oh, so region, EC2 on AWS. You're obviously going to be running it on EC2 on AWS. And spend. So the spend is a commitment of that spend, that current spend or greater over the period of the term. So here's an example of conversions, because it can get a little bit confusing with convertible RIs. So once again, disclaimer, not the actual cost of an RI. If it was, wow, it'd be crazy. So it's not the actual cost of an RI. An M4 extra large. Let's say it's $20 up front. You've got $20 up front remaining. And your workloads change, your environment's changed. Your dev team comes to you and goes, you know what, we actually want to split it up. You can go down to 2 M4 larges. If they were both $10 up front at that period of time, there's no true up required. You can change them down, fine, no problems. Sizing to a larger instance, you've got an M4 XL, and you maybe want to move to an M4 2XL. So maybe you're running your own database application on there, and it's grown. And they now need a little more oomph. Well, you can scale up. There will be a true up of $20 required to get you to that level. But that's the flexibility you get. Another example of the conversion. So sizing to a more expensive instance type. Well, I'm currently running an M4 XL. Once again, not the true cost. And I want to go to an R4. So now, once again, it's a database load, but I just need that extra power. Well, that's $25 up front. So there's a true up of $5 on your bill. And guess what? Well, sizing to less expensive instance types. Your dev team comes to you and goes, well, you know what, we've done some amazing work with refactoring, and we can actually split this up into a little bit of a microarchitecture design. We need to take it down to T2s. The story here is you're not locked in if you go convertible RIs, right? You can chop and change as you need. Once again, a slight true up, but you've gone from 1 instance down to 3. So if you're thinking of container and you're thinking of moving that route, this is a great option as well. RIs, well, RIs is a great story, very confusing, but is it worth the effort? Real world example, a financial services customer has reduced or decreased their bill by their instance cost by 39% just by going to RIs. And as you can see, the workloads increased, right? So as the workloads increased, they've increased their level of RIs. Big thing here as well is they're increasing their level of RIs as they're working along. So we'll cover that. And RIs are best for always-on instances. They are very good for stop-starts as well, but RIs are best for always-on. That's where you're going to get the biggest savings. The savings can be up to 73%, and approximately 20 to 40% savings just for 1 year. So if you're going to give just a 1-year commitment, you can see 20 to 40% savings. And for those of you that are following the What's New, released literally 3 days ago, Elasticsearch has been added to the RIs. So for those of you that are using Elasticsearch, fantastic. You can now go and do that with RIs as well. For a customer of mine, it's quite interesting. I started a journey with them 2 years ago. We had a long conversation about RIs at the time. They felt they didn't want to. They didn't quite know where their environment was going. We're now into the second year. They're looking forward, and they're like, Richard, you're never going to believe this. That project is going to be around for another year. That means that if they had bought the 3-year all upfront RIs then, we did the math for them because they just wanted to do the math so they could look and cry. The next year, the next entire year, they would run for free for that workload. So that's a whole project that would be able to run for free in the last year. So that's just an example of the type of savings you can see. Not always applicable. It varies between instances, but that's just an example, right? So very confusing. How do I do this? Well, you know what? Cost Explorer, once again, we've made some huge improvements and some huge advances to Cost Explorer. Reserved instance utilization is now available there. It shows you how you're doing your coverage. You've got your coverage. This shows how much of your fleet you're currently covered by RIs. Once again, this is from their previous customer. This is, you can see their on-demand workloads and their start-stop. They're looking at about 50% coverage, which is really good for them right now. They're looking at upping that. And lastly, we have a recommendations engine. Go check it out. It can be a little bit aggressive at times in terms of the recommendations it gives you. Buying 466 C5 large instances is probably not what I'm going to tell my customer, but it's a recommendation, and it breaks it down into a lot of options. Go look at it. It will add value, and it'll give you a good place to start. So I'd be remiss if I didn't cover EC2 Spot. EC2 Spot is basically currently additional capacity in the EC2 fleet, and it's a market where you can get really, really, really cheap workloads. However, The catch is there's a 2-minute disclaimer in terms of that we can shut your workload down at 2 minutes. So you get really cheap instances you can go and run your workloads on, but we give you 2 minutes to shut it down before we reuse it. 50 to 90% savings. Why would I use EC2 Spot? It's great for big data workloads. It's great for things where you need to do a quick batch job. Maybe you're doing some really big data analytics. You don't really mind if a job drops and it respawns. Great place to go start. Go have a look at it. Pillar 4, storage optimization, right? So storage optimization, we have obviously EBS. We have our 2 storage types. We have EBS and S3. In the EBS world, well, we've got our general purpose. That's the default. Any instance you spin up by default will come up with GP2. We've obviously got provisioned IOPS. That's a little bit more expensive. However, you're getting the benefit. That's a higher throughput, higher performance, and that's aimed at database loads. Then we've got throughput optimized. This is optimized more for, once again, EMR loads, log processing, big data. It comes at a low cost, low price point. Cold, the SC1, that's similar workloads to throughput optimized, however less frequent, comes at an even cheaper or more cost-effective option. So if you're using EBS volumes and you're doing those types of workloads, go check out the different options available. S3, our favorite service, absolutely. So typically we refer to storage, hot, warm, and cold. S3 hot is your default tendency. That's kind of, you set up a bucket, you put stuff in it, that's where it's at, right? For those of you that don't know, we have lifecycle policies in S3. We allow you to set periods of time, life cycles, around moving data out of S3. Why would I want to do that? Well, maybe you're an insurance firm. Maybe you're a firm that's keeping financial data. Maybe you're a firm that's keeping VPC flow logs for whatever reason, and you need it as part of a compliance. You know, that can take up a lot of storage if you start doing a lot of logging. You know what? Offload it after 30 days. Move it into infrequent access. After another maybe 3 months, if you don't need it, send it into Glacier. Glacier price point is ridiculously cost effective. Go check it out. Look at long-term storage. Use lifecycle policies. You shouldn't have to worry about moving stuff manually. We have S3 Analytics. It's an engine that basically just allows you to see kind of what your usage of S3 is. Lifecycle policies also clean up multi-part uploads, for those of you that might know what those are. Pillar 5, measuring and monitoring. So when we look at measuring and monitoring, we've got cost allocation tags. Cost allocation tags is first and foremost in cost optimization and monitoring your environment. Make sure your tags are relevant. Richard as a tag is kind of intuitive, but if you've got production, dev, and test workloads and they're all called Richard, you know what, it's not really going to be relevant. So tagging is a great place to start, great place to optimize. We give you AWS Tag Editor to enable you to assess and look at how to do that. And AWS Config Lambda can help in those environments. These are smaller options, they're not going to scale at massive scale, right? We have third-party tools that are available as well. Atlassian's got an open source tool for tag management, and so does Capital One. So I'll post the links, go check those out. And last, well, not least, but define metrics, set targets, review at regular cadence. Kind of questions you should be asking. What's changed and why? This is the visibility and insight you should have in your environment. This is part of the overall monitoring process. Am I picking the right resources to fit my business? Am I utilizing them? Are costs turning on and off as expected? And am I paying less for the same capacity? And actually, am I using the capacity that I paid for? That's the next question. On that note, we have a lot of third parties that play in the space. It's a big space. So all of these partners are here today. New Relic, Spot Inst, Cloudability, Cloud Checker, they're all on the floor downstairs. Go check them out. For those of you that want to play in Spot Market, definitely go talk to Spot Inst. They're doing some incredible stuff in this environment. And at that point, I would like to hand over to David Stanley from Trainline.
Thank you. So Richard is really taking you through the theory of what you can do around cost saving, and it's definitely something that your TAM can help you with. At Trainline, we took that theory, we used the agility that we have around our products, and actually did some really great work on cost optimization. So for you, I'm going to take you through and see how that works. First of all, Trainline in numbers. So hopefully, most of you have used us before, you know about us. But actually, we're pretty big. It's a very big number, 2.3 billion a year in train tickets. We do 60 million visits a month. And this is a really good one. So 127,000 smarter journeys a day. And the really important thing about smarter journeys is this is not just about you booking a train ticket. What we're trying to do is make the journey that you take much easier. So this goes along with getting to the station, finding the right platform, finding a seat on the train, and then the tools after that if you've had a problem. We do 177 rail and coach companies across Europe, so it's really a massive inventory that we have that you can tap into. Tech, 100% in AWS and have been for some time. We speak quite a few times at these AWS events, and we've done a lot around our migration. We're now up to 300 deployments a week for our services. When I started at Trainline, we were very proud of doing a big monolith every 6 weeks. So to go to 300 a week is a huge achievement. Within that, 400 microservices. Train booking is hard, especially when you're doing it for 177 different coach and train carriers. So you can quickly see where we need this agility coming in. Me. I love that picture. So my job really is to make everything easier. And a lot of people say to me, that's great, but what does reliability actually mean? And really, this is a reflection that we've moved beyond the fact that a platform is available for you. Can you actually get to the website? It's about your journey through that website. How about the interactions you're doing? Are you getting an error when you're going through? Or are things working as they should do for you? But it's not just about the operational side. To do that, we have to be looking at the future. We have to know what our customers want. And for me, that's both external customers, hopefully in the room, and actually internal customers, so dev teams. What's the actual infrastructure and AWS provisions that they need to help our customers and to move forward? To do that, I have some standard teams, desktop support, ops, infrastructure, and capacity and governance. The really important one here is capacity and governance. So in a capacity role, previously that would have been around a physical data center when you have a huge lead time when it comes to getting in hosts, servers, VMware licensing, storage has to be done up front and then provisioned. And we had that role. Then we moved to AWS and we wondered what to do. And actually, we still have that person in place now, and they play a really important role because capacity to us now is on a daily basis. It's about, are we using the right instance types? Have we got the right settings in AWS for our cost? Are we being most optimistic and efficient with what we're trying to do? So it's a very important role. And if I'm honest, most of the work that I'm talking to you about now was done by that person rather than me. Finally, so why am I talking about costs? I don't work for the finance team. I work directly for our CTO. And there's two reasons for this. One, there's a quirk of Trainline history that the IS director had the responsibility for the managed service that was provided. Now that's my role, and the managed service comes from AWS in that way. So I have the pleasure of having those costs. Secondly, I'm actually the best person to make these decisions. So going back to my primary role to make sure everything works, everybody jokes about how to save money in cloud, and that is turning everything off. That's going to go directly against my core principle, which is to make sure that works. So when it comes to making decisions about how we scale, the risk that we might take around with that, they all come back to me, and I actually have this balance of how optimistic will we be on our cost saving versus what's that actually going to do for us. Trainline. So Trainline are actually quite a lot older than most people realize. We started in 1999 with our first online ticket sale. My PowerPoint skills are amazing. It gets better, don't worry. So we were then bought by Exponent, and previously to that, we were owned by Virgin Trains. We were very much just a rail company that happened to do online rail ticketing. And that was not a very interesting place for them. They'd much rather run the actual train stock. Exponent bought us, and we kind of grew along with the rail market, but we didn't really invest in that technology. The first technology update came in about 2011 when we moved to virtualization. I then joined Trainline in May 2012 as the major incident manager. So I will leave that with you as to why that was necessary. 2014 was actually a watershed moment. So we got a new CTO, which is Claire Gill-Martin, and a new CEO, Claire, and a new CTO, Mark. And what they brought was a very much more product-orientated mindset to what we do. So now we don't just kind of sell you that train ticket, we're trying to do that smarter journey. We're trying to use technology to make it easier for you to do that. And we went through a whole cultural change around that. That soon became to the attention of KKR, who are another private equity company who like to invest in high-growth companies, particularly in the technology sector. Around the same time, we started our work to move to AWS, and we completed that a year later. So you can see we've been around for a little while. We did a really great job of that. We didn't just do a lift and shift, we changed quite a lot of our applications as we went along. We broke up part of that monolith. We had a whole set of cloud principles that had to be adhered to, which is things like no IP addresses, use DNS. We put a layer of tooling in along the top called Environment Manager, which is actually open source and you can use it. And that gave us a lot of flexibility in what we're doing and also helped us when it came to this cost optimization. We then purchased Captain Train in March 2016, and Captain Train were a Paris-based startup that did for EU Rail basically what Trainline did in the UK. And really, we started this journey with them to take on board the expertise that they had around European travel and start to integrate more carriers into our platform. So around August 2017, we started to deploy those services and build out that European side of our platform a lot more. And at this point, we knew that our AWS cost bill was going to increase. We were going to add more services, we're going to add more transactions in there, we're going to move more stuff across into our UK environment. And we were ready for that, and we budgeted for it. A little bit later, I'll show you how that started to go. And then finally, I've had to put this on because we're really proud of it. So in April 2018, you can now buy Eurostar through Trainline UK. We would have done more PR around it, but SNCF are on strike. So we might have to wait a little bit. But please, check it out, it's great. So how does this relate all back to customer? The customer story and the cost optimization. This is our actual sanitized budget. So this is a daily spend per day across all our environments in AWS. So you can see here, look, we budgeted a little bit higher. We knew we were going to do that work later on in the year. We tried to build up a buffer alongside that. And that's OK for Q1. Q2 came along, and at the end of it, we realized that we'd actually eaten into that budget and were starting to go over it. Now, that was a little bit of a surprise because we've still got another year left, and you can see we are substantially above where we're supposed to be. And to us, this isn't just about saving the money. It's making sure we're spending the money in the right place. We don't want to just spend that on utility compute. We want to make sure that our AWS budget is being used where it can actually impact the product much more than just the baseline. So then we had to extrapolate this out. We started a new budgeting round, and we looked into it. And if you take a very pessimistic view, what you see here is a 53% overspend by the end of the year, which is a significant sum by anybody's money. I took a slightly better view at it and said, well, what if we've hit our peak and we're just going to move along? That's better, but we're still looking at a 13% overspend for the year, which again is not looking good. Now I'm going to be super optimistic and say, hey, what if we got back to the level that we're supposed to be at, had our budget covered that overspend? And at this point, no, it was about 5% over. But to be honest, given the numbers we're talking about, I would have been very happy if we'd have done that. So how do we do at the end of our year? Boom. Nailed it. So pleased with this one. And what we actually came in at is 1% under budget. And I think this is the chart that got me speaking to you today, because the fact it goes up and then quickly drops is the really great thing about this story. So what we managed to do, within 2 weeks, we turned that agility that we have around product and actually went back to teams, talked to them, and managed to make changes within 2 weeks that started to bring that spend down. And you can see this is a massive achievement. Everybody was really pleased with this one, and we actually didn't think it was going to be possible.
Sorry, quick question. Can you go back one slide very quickly? So that you've managed to achieve there, that's completely just AWS. That's not people, that's not process, that's not fiddling with offloading devs, changing teams. That's just your AWS environment.
Absolutely. This is pure AWS spend across all environments. We didn't impact business agility, we didn't impact the product teams with what we're doing, and we didn't impact you as customers as well.
Thank you.
Totally not scripted. Right, so how do we do it? Tagging and data. So I'm going to pick up where Richard left off. You can't do anything without that data. And tagging is a massive part of that. It's a really simple thing to do, but without that, you really don't know where you are. So first up, right, you need to gather that information. You need to put those tags in and then look at it. So this is actually a real screenshot of our console. You can see here that we have our custom tags in place. The big ones, own and cluster. To us, cluster is a development team and a group of squads that are responsible for a part of our product. So within that, I can quickly look and say, hey, look, these instances are actually attached to this dev team, so therefore I can go and talk to them about their usage. And we do that across a lot of different services. The important thing here is that that tagging is done for them. So when they deploy through our Environment Manager tool, that tagging gets automatically put in there because they are the owning team. Nobody has to do this. There's no manual work, and it works every single time. So you got it, right? You need to analyze. This is a tool that we use internally called Billing Explorer, which is actually very similar to the cost report that's now come out, but we built this 2 years ago because we recognize there's a need to get some really granular data. It uses the billing file and puts that into some other stuff and passes it through. And it gives us visibility on those costs, but it also means that we can analyze those and say what instance types are we running where, why would that actually cause that level of bill. Monitoring. So monitoring is not just about the operational side. If you're going to make decisions about instance sizes, like Richard has mentioned, you need to know what the impact on the actual instance is going to be, and therefore you as customers. We're massive users as New Relic, and we found that we could use it both to look at the ASG sizes and monitor those. That's my costs and related dashboard. I was going to call it David's board of shame, but I thought that was a little bit harsh. But this is really important. So if you're making those changes, you need to be aware of what they're going to do to your application. Back to my core role, if it's going to impact our application in a negative way, I'm probably not going to do that, and I'll look for cost savings elsewhere. Understanding. You have to know what you're looking at, and I'm very fortunate to have that capacity person that works for me. He understands in depth the AWS side of things, but also the Trainline context. He knows about the services that we run, and he's able to look at that and make decisions and help dev teams along the way. So people and the expertise you have internally is going to help you with this. Visibility and ownership. Whenever we talk about agility and DevOps and those things, visibility and ownership comes up, and tooling is a big part of that. It's not the only thing, but it's a big part. We use New Relic extensively, so we have their full suite of products. Partway through our cost-saving work, we implemented the New Relic infrastructure product, which is kind of like servers, but a bit better. What that gave us was deeper insight into those instances, but more importantly, you could see it off a single web link, and you can email that around. It also ties back into the application, so you can look at the application and then say what the instance is type running like and how's that actually working. It was really, really good. You've got to share that data. There's no point having it if you can do that and offer guidance. I have a screen grab here of an actual email from Mark, our CTO. So the visibility is good and bad. It's good others can see it. It's bad when your CTO starts dabbling around with it and sending you emails about stuff. But actually, he's right. So he spotted 14 hosts running, only an average of 13.1% CPU, and then said, hey, let's have a look at that and do something about it. And this is really great to have that buy-in, but just by clicking a few buttons on a website, he's able to see that information and then ping off an email. Work with existing processes. You're not going to get things done if you try and force people into your way of working. What we found was that by helping development teams understand where that spend was, we could then look at it, guide them, talk about it. But that's not going to get anything done. Create tickets in their backlog and ask them to prioritize those. It drops into their processes, and naturally that stuff's going to get done. Now, my favorite example of this was a dev team that pulled out a 44% reduction in daily spend at the hat. And we didn't actually know they did this until I got an email saying, hey, we've completed all these tickets. Here's the impact of doing that. So to reduce that by 44% without actually us having to sit there and bunch of them was really great to see. You've got to let people get on with stuff. This is a really important point as well. There is a fear around the cost optimization side, so changing instance types. Am I going to slow these things down? Do I really want to be the person that presses the button that might then impact a customer's experience? And you kind of have to let people do this and tell them that's safe to do so, as long as they've been through the right process up to that point. So this one's a little bit wordy, but what I wanted to do is, since you've taken the time to come and listen, you can take a photo and you can read and have this back. But one of the big things I came up with is it's a bias for action over backlog. So we can put things in people's queues and get them to work on that through their own stories and their own epics. But actually, what we really want to do is, if there is something that as an infrastructure team we can take care of on their behalf, we want to get that done. And we did that quite a few times with various different changes. We told the teams we're going to do it, we went ahead and did it, and we did it in a safe and controlled way. Because again, I'm responsible for making sure this stuff works. Ruthless enforcement. My favorite stories here is we went to a dev team and said, why have you got this instance running 24/7 in your test environment? And the answer that came back was, oh yeah, sometimes at like 3 o'clock in the morning, I like to go and hack some code, and I might think of a problem and fix it. It's a very developer thing to do. That's great, well done. But you're not doing that, and I'm not running a server 24/7 just in case you wake up and decide to do that. So instead, we just showed them how to turn it on and turn it off. I have no idea if they do that. I'm not going to check. But to me, that's still being shut down overnight, which is the most cost-effective way of doing that. So taking advantage early is really important. AWS do a lot of work around bringing costs down, surprisingly so. If you don't take action on those as soon as you can do, then you're just throwing money away. One of the key things that I was telling people was, if we have something that will save $100 today, then tomorrow, if we've not done that, that's $200 gone, and then $300 gone, and $400 gone. And this quickly mounts up. So if we go back to that slide where we had 6 months to bring this down, I used to extrapolate costs out and explain to people that that decision about not doing that now means that we won't be saving $50,000 by the end of the year. It's really a great way to do it. Weekly reports of spend, back to visibility. I actually didn't know what our spend was on a weekly basis. And the thing here is that you have to know why increases have happened, which might be okay, because there might be a new product or service that's coming out. But you also want to know those decreases are. And are those decreases hopefully outweighing those increases? And then one of the things I do with my infrastructure teams is that we effectively run an agile process within the teams. We have sprints, and we broke the work down into 2-week sprints. And we could see each 2 weeks what we were going to do, what the impact of that was, and then we review it at the end to say, yes, we have saved that money, what's the next thing? And this is all pretty sensible stuff, but until you've been through it, it's a little bit hard to fathom. So basically, you've got a toolbox here, right? You have tagging, data, visibility, and ownership. And these are all things that hopefully you've got and you can start to use within your company. Whenever I do a presentation like this, I find that I always come back to people, process, and technology, which is quite an old term from managed service providers. But what this actually tells you is that you don't get anything done if you don't have people in place and they're on board with what you're after. You've got to have processes in place to help those people do the best that they can do. If that's a new process or an existing one, it doesn't matter, as long as they know how they're supposed to achieve something. And then technology, you need to have that technology to underpin to allow them to do that. So within all that, keep those 3 in mind. So practical examples. I want to prove to you we did do some of this stuff. So top 5, reinforcing test environment shutdown. Richard mentions it a lot. It is absolutely the thing to do. It really, the start-stop should be fine on that one. So you need to get that one done. And that saves a whole bunch of money. We've got this NST environment where we do performance testing. And during our exercise to add those European services into our UK platform, we wanted to performance test things. And we left that platform running 24/7. It's expensive. It's basically the same size as production, because that's what you're trying to measure. And we were doing long runs overnight sometimes, and people wanted to drop services in there and try it out. Again, all great stuff, but we don't need to run that 24/7. So we just implemented a very easy Outlook calendar that people could book and say, I need the NFT environment at this time, and it will be switched on or switched off as it wasn't needed. It saves us a whole ton of money. This was a great one. So Christmas downsizing. So about 3 weeks before Christmas, I realized, which they remembered, people don't book as many tickets over Christmas. Therefore, our infrastructure need is less. And we'd never done this before. We scale our test environments a lot. We do a little bit of scaling in production, but we don't do it wholesale. So we put a lot of manual effort into this, and we managed to reduce our footprint over Christmas by a decent amount. It matched demand, so there's no problems there. And the great thing about that was actually when we came back from Christmas, we didn't go back up to where we were. We didn't add all those instance types back in, because it proved to people that actually you can run hotter without impacting anything. So this was really great. Again, taking advantage early. Big ones here, C4 to C5 instance types. As Richard mentioned, the newer types are generally cheaper. We moved to that C5, we got performance impact, performance improvement, and we saved money, so it's a win-win for everybody. The other big one here was the infrequent access in S3. So again, we had a whole bunch of data that wasn't being used or accessed on a daily basis. We switched that on, we saved a whole lot of money. My favorite one was we had versioning turned on by default in S3, particularly for our backups bucket. So when we were backing up, we had versioning in there on that file, but we're also doing manual versioning by timestamping those files and creating a big kind of horizontal backup. Problem with that is we're then backing up our backup above backup, and we're paying for that every day. We turned that off, and the S3 cost went straight down with no impact on anything. Really sensible checkbox items in AWS that you can look at and just make those decisions around. Finally, I was pretty annoyed over this stuff, and I'm sure people got annoyed at me. It's basically part of my job is to be annoying and tell people to do stuff differently. And what they found was that if it's important, I'm going to keep bugging them to do it until they get it done. And that was fine. But you should do that. And of course, there's loads of other stuff. There's a death by 1,000 cuts thing that went on that we just kind of got that done. So I'm going to remind you of that result, right? So we came in under our budget line. When we crunched the numbers at the end of the year, we found that we actually had a 6% reduction in our costs on the previous year, even after significant transaction growth. We had a massive investment in data infrastructure to give the price prediction products, the BusyBot, and many other things that help you with your journey. And we rolled out a load of new services. So for us, this really couldn't have been better. Unfortunately, I'm now a victim of my own success because I have an objective for 2018, which is to come in lower again. So we have all those challenges, we've got to get that done. So that's it. We're done. That was our story. Hopefully there's some practical things in there that you can take away. Richard put this slide in. I didn't want to put my head up twice. It's very narcissistic. But anyway, here I am. If you want to contact me, I'm David.Stanley at the Trainline. I'll be around a little bit afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David Stanley from Trainline. I just need 2 more minutes of your time very quickly. In summary, from my side, number 1, go turn on the cost and usage reporting. You'll find that in your billing area of your console. Number 2, don't forget the 5 pillars: instance right sizing, elasticity, pick the right pricing model, RIs, go and investigate. Tons of work to be done there, tons of opportunity there. Right, finding the right storage class. And lastly, but not least, wrapping it all up, measuring and monitoring. Once you've done that, we have a ton more places you can go look to save money. So when you finally find that you've got to that environment, come back, talk to us. There's a lot of places you can go look to save even more costs. Make extensive use of Cost Explorer. This is your best friend. Seriously, it'll break down your costs, show you your costs, show you where your spend is. Get all your teams using it. Point people to this. Ask them to start giving you Cost Explorer reports of what they're doing. That's the way to make sure they're using it. Last but not least, we have a TAM pod right out. TAM pod. It's right outside the theater. Go ask them. They're all talking about cost optimization here. Go ask them about it. And last but not least, please go see our partners. They're here to help you. Let's see how they can help you with your bill. Please complete the session summary in the app. And thank you very much for attending the session. It's been great.